Hello, dear listeners, or should I say, dear viewers, because I'm super curious, where in the world are you watching this video from? Drop a comment below with your location and the time. It always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to my dulcet tones all over the globe. Oh, and while you're at it, give that like button a quick tap. You know, for good karma. Alright, buckle up buttercups, because tonight we're diving headfirst into the glorious, perplexing and utterly bonkers world of Victorian social rules. Trust me, these folks had some seriously bizarre ideas about proper behaviour that'll make your most awkward modern moments seem like a walk in the park. Or, rather, a very slow, deliberately paced, and heavily chaperoned walk in the park. So, imagine this. Congratulations, you've just woken up in London, circa 1850. Your eyes blink open to find yourself in a narrow iron bed frame. Forget your memory foam mattress. This one's stuffed with horsehair. Slightly prickly, slightly lumpy, like sleeping on a grumpy hedgehog. The room is chilly. Really chilly. The fire you fell asleep to has died down to glowing embers, leaving just enough light to make out the shadowy, bulky wardrobe, the washstand with its ceramic basin, and a dressing table with a tiny smudged mirror. Outside, you hear the distant clatter of iron-rimmed carriage wheels on cobblestones, a dog barks, and the air. Oh, the air. It smells of coal smoke. Always coal smoke in London. It seeps in through every crack, under every door, through every window frame, mixing with the faint scent of bergamot oil from the perfume bottle on your dressing table. That sharp, citrusy smell everyone's dabbing on these days. The sheets around you are cotton, not particularly soft, but at least they're clean. And your nightgown? Flannel, buttoned right up to your chin. Good heavens. Imagine someone seeing your neck or wrists while you're sleeping. The scandal. On the table beside your bed sits a small bell. You reach for it and give it a tentative ring. Almost immediately you hear footsteps on the stairs, and your maid, Mary, appears at the door, already fully dressed despite the ungodly hour. "Good morning, miss," she says with a small curtsy. "Shall I draw the curtains?" Without waiting for your answer, she crosses to the window and pulls back heavy velvet drapes, letting in the weak, grey London daylight. The glass is smeared with soot from the countless chimneys belching smoke into the air. "What would you like to wear today, miss?" Mary asks, moving to the wardrobe and opening it to reveal an array of dresses, each more elaborate than the last. And here, my friends, is where your crash course in Victorian social rules truly begins. Because what you wear, how you speak, how you walk, who you talk to, when you talk to them, and basically everything else you do today will be governed by the most complex unwritten social code humans have ever created. The Victorians were essentially playing life on expert mode. One wrong move, and boom, social disgrace. You have a morning call with Mrs. Hartley at 11, Mary reminds you, as she selects a day dress in a deep blue, and then tea with your cousin Emily at 4 o'clock. Now, these morning calls are your first head-scratcher. Despite the name, they never, ever happen in the morning. Morning calls take place between 3 and 5 in the afternoon. I know it makes zero sense, but call them afternoon calls, and people will look at you like you've lost your mind. Oh, and they last exactly 15 minutes. Not 14, not 16, 15. And you better have a pocket watch to time yourself, because overstaying is considered extremely rude. Mary helps you into your clothes, which, let me tell you, is a whole process. First, the chemise, basically a long cotton slip, then the corset. Oh boy, the corset. Mary puts it around your waist and starts pulling the laces tighter. Tighter, you gasp, remembering that a proper Victorian lady is supposed to have a waist you can span with your hands. "Yes, miss," Mary says, yanking harder until you can barely breathe, your ribs shifting slightly, your lungs only expanding about halfway. This, my dear, is fashion. Next come the petticoats. 1, 2, 3 of them, each adding a layer of bulk to your lower half. Then the crinoline, a cage-like structure made of steel hoops that makes your skirt bell out around you like a giant lampshade. Finally, the dress goes over it all, with its tight bodice and enormous skirt. By the time you're done, you're wearing about 15 pounds of clothing. Mary does your hair, pulling it back severely from your face and arranging it in a neat bun at the nape of your neck. No flyaways allowed. Everything controlled. Everything proper. "Will you be wearing gloves or mittens today, miss?" Mary asks, holding up both options. "Gloves," you say, remembering that a proper Victorian lady never, ever shows her bare hands in public. Ever. Your hands should remain mysteriously concealed at all times, like some kind of weird, hand-based modesty rule. As Mary helps you with your gloves, you remember another cardinal rule: no perfume. Queen Victoria herself has declared that the heavy, musky perfumes of the previous era are vulgar. Instead, you dab a little lemon and bergamot oil on your handkerchief, just enough to smell clean, not enough to suggest you're trying to seduce anyone with your scandalous scent. Fully dressed, you make your way downstairs for breakfast. The house is coming alive around you. Servants scurry about, dusting, sweeping, polishing. The cook has been up since 5 a.m. preparing the morning meal. In the dining room, your father sits at the head of the table, newspaper in hand. Your mother is at the other end, already writing correspondence. They're both fully dressed, because Victorians wouldn't dream of appearing at breakfast in anything resembling casual clothes. "Good morning," you say, taking your seat. Your father lowers his newspaper just enough to nod at you, then raises it again. Public displays of affection, even between family members, are not the Victorian way. No hugs, no kisses on the cheek. Breakfast is substantial. Eggs, bacon, kidneys, toast, porridge. Victorians eat a lot at breakfast. It's their biggest meal of the day. You pick at yours, your corset making it impossible to take more than tiny bites. "Remember, Jane," your mother says, not looking up from her letter. "Mrs. Hartley's daughter has just become engaged. Be sure to congratulate her, but don't ask any details about the wedding. That would be presumptuous." You nod, making a mental note. This is typical of the invisible rulebook that governs Victorian society. You must acknowledge important life events, but never appear too interested in them. Curiosity is vulgar. After breakfast, you have a few hours before your morning call. You decide to work on your needlepoint, a suitably feminine pursuit. Idle hands are the devil's workshop after all, and a proper Victorian lady is never idle. You sit by the window in the drawing room, stitching a pattern of flowers onto a piece of linen. Your mother joins you, taking up her own needlework. "I saw Mrs. Fairchild yesterday," she says casually. "Her son has returned from university." You keep your eyes on your stitching, even though your heart beats a little faster. Thomas Fairchild. You danced with him at a ball last season before he went away to Oxford. He had kind eyes and didn't step on your feet, which, frankly, puts him ahead of most of the young men you've danced with. "How nice," you say, your voice carefully neutral. "She mentioned he asked after you," your mother continues, watching your reaction closely. You feel your cheeks warm, but keep your expression composed. "Did he? That's very civil of him." Your mother smiles slightly, satisfied with your restrained response. Showing too much interest in a young man would be improper. The game of Victorian courtship is all about pretending you're not playing it. At precisely 11:15, you put on your bonnet, gloves, and cloak, and set out with your mother for Mrs. Hartley's house. You carry a small card case containing your visiting cards, little pieces of paper with your name printed on them. These are essential to the ritual of morning calls. Mrs. Hartley lives just a few streets away, but walking too quickly would be unladylike. You adopt the proper Victorian lady's pace. Small steps, back straight, eyes modestly downcast. Your enormous skirt swings as you walk, occasionally threatening to knock over small children or dogs who get too close. People pass you on the street. Men tip their hats. You acknowledge them with the slightest nod, never making eye contact with strangers. A gentleman would never speak to a lady he hasn't been formally introduced to, and a lady would certainly never speak to a strange gentleman. You arrive at Mrs. Hartley's at precisely 11 o'clock. Punctuality is crucial. Being early is as bad as being late. Both suggest you don't have enough engagements to fill your day, which would be embarrassing. The butler answers the door. You hand him your visiting cards, one from you and one from your mother. He takes them on a small silver tray and shows you into the drawing room, where Mrs. Hartley and her daughter Charlotte are waiting. Everyone curtsies. No one hugs or kisses cheeks. Physical contact is kept to an absolute minimum. "How kind of you to call," Mrs. Hartley says, gesturing for you to sit down. You arrange yourself carefully on a small sofa, mindful of your enormous skirt. Sitting gracefully in a crinoline is an art form. You must perch right on the edge of your seat to accommodate the steel cage around your lower half. "We were so pleased to hear your happy news," your mother says to Charlotte, who blushes appropriately. "Thank you," Charlotte murmurs, eyes downcast. "Mr. Edwards is very kind." And that's it. That's all the information you're going to get about Charlotte's engagement. Not what her fiancé is like, not when the wedding will be, not how they met or whether she loves him. Those questions would be prying, and Victorians do not pry. The conversation moves on to safe topics. The weather, cloudy but not raining. Recent sermons at church, uplifting but not too long. And a musical performance you all attended, accomplished but not showy. Everything is described in the most moderate terms possible. Strong opinions are for the lower classes. After exactly 15 minutes, your mother gives an almost imperceptible nod. That's your cue. You both stand up. "It was so lovely to see you," Mrs. Hartley says, also standing. More curtsies, more pleasantries, then you're back out on the street. Morning call successfully completed. "That went well," your mother says as you walk home. "Charlotte looked well, didn't she?" "Very well," you agree. In Victorian conversation, "well" is the highest praise one can give. Back at home, you have a light luncheon, then spend the afternoon reading an improving book. Nothing too exciting or romantic, of course. Novels that stir the emotions are considered potentially dangerous for young ladies. At 4 o'clock, you have tea with your cousin Emily, who comes to your house. The ritual is similar to the morning call, but slightly less formal since Emily is family. You still maintain perfect posture, still speak in measured tones about appropriate subjects, still avoid anything that might be considered gossip. After Emily leaves, you have a few hours before dinner. You practice the piano for exactly 1 hour, enough to maintain your skills without suggesting that you harbour inappropriate ambitions of becoming a professional musician. Dinner is at 7 p.m, a relatively informal family meal since you're not entertaining guests. Still, you change into a different dress, slightly fancier than your day dress, but not as elaborate as an evening gown. Victorians change clothes multiple times a day, each outfit precisely calibrated to the specific social context. At the dinner table, conversation is polite, but not particularly personal. Your father discusses business matters with your brother. Your mother mentions charity work she's involved with. You listen attentively, occasionally offering a gentle opinion when directly addressed. After dinner, you all retire to the drawing room. Your brother and father might have brandy and cigars in the study, but ladies don't drink anything stronger than sherry, and they certainly don't smoke. Instead, you play the piano for the family or work on your needlepoint some more. By 10 o'clock, everyone is ready for bed. Another day of Victorian propriety successfully navigated. As Mary helps you undress, removing the layers one by one, you finally feel like you can breathe again when the corset comes off. "Will you need anything else, miss?" Mary asks, as she helps you into your nightgown. "No, thank you, Mary," you say, settling into bed with a small sigh of relief. She curtsies and leaves, taking the oil lamp with her. The room falls into darkness, except for the faint glow from the banked fire in the grate. You lie there thinking about the day, all those rules, all that restraint. It's exhausting. But there's also something almost comforting about knowing exactly what's expected of you at every moment. As you drift towards sleep, you wonder what tomorrow will bring in this world of rigid propriety and hidden feelings. You'll need to navigate a formal dinner party, which means a whole new set of rules to remember. But that can wait until morning. For now, you let the distant sounds of the city lull you toward dreams. Your last thought before sleep takes you is of Thomas Fairchild and his kind eyes. In this world where so much is restrained and controlled, even the smallest connection feels significant. You wonder if you'll see him soon, and what complicated dance of social rules you'll have to perform if you do. Outside, fog rolls in from the Thames, wrapping the city in its damp embrace. Gas lamps cast hazy halos of light on the cobblestone streets. A carriage passes, wheels clattering. A night watchman calls the hour, and all across London, behind the prim facades of countless houses, Victorians lie in their beds, constrained by their social rules, even in their dreams. Morning arrives with the sound of Mary drawing back your curtains again. The pale winter sun barely penetrates the ever-present London fog. Another day of Victorian propriety awaits you. "Good morning, miss," Mary says, placing a cup of hot chocolate on your bedside table. "It's going to be a busy day." You sip the chocolate as Mary lays out your morning dress. Today is indeed important. You're attending a formal dinner party at the Fairchilds' house. Yes, those Fairchilds. Thomas will be there. The morning passes in a blur of preparations. Your mother insists you practice piano for 2 hours instead of the usual one. "The Fairchilds may ask you to play," she explains. "Mrs. Fairchild mentioned their new pianoforte. It would be rude to decline." Another Victorian rule to remember: never refuse a direct request to demonstrate an accomplishment, but also never appear too eager to show off. It's a delicate balance. After lunch, you take a light walk in the nearby park with your mother. The crisp winter air is actually cleaner than inside most homes, where coal fires fill the rooms with a fine layer of soot. Ladies stroll along the pathways, nodding politely to acquaintances. Gentlemen tip their hats as they pass. "Remember," your mother says quietly as you walk, "at dinner, you'll be seated according to rank. Don't appear surprised by your placement, whatever it may be." You nod. The Victorian dinner table is a battlefield of social hierarchy. The most important male guest sits to the right of the hostess. The most important female guest sits to the right of the host. Everyone else is arranged in descending order of social importance. Being seated near the bottom of the table is a clear message about your status. Back at home, preparation for the evening begins in earnest. A formal dinner party requires your finest appearance. Mary runs a bath for you, adding a few drops of rose oil to the water. The bathroom is chilly despite the small fire burning in the grate. You bathe quickly, shivering as you step out onto the cold floor. Then the dressing begins. Tonight requires full evening dress. Your corset is laced even tighter than usual. Your crinoline is wider. Your gown is pale blue silk with delicate lace trim. The neckline is lower than your day dress, showing your collarbones and a hint of shoulder. The maximum amount of skin a respectable unmarried woman can display. Your hair's arranged in an elaborate style, with small silk flowers pinned among the curls. A light dusting of rice powder on your face gives you the fashionable pale complexion. No rouge, though. Only actresses and women of questionable virtue wear obvious makeup. "You look beautiful, miss," Mary says, stepping back to admire her work. You barely recognise yourself in the mirror. You look exactly like a proper Victorian young lady should. Poised, controlled, elegant. Your waist impossibly small, your skirt ridiculously wide. Fashion is suffering, but fashion must be obeyed. Your father has arranged for a carriage to take you to the Fairchilds. It's a cold night, and walking would ruin your carefully arranged appearance. Plus, arriving in a carriage rather than on foot displays your family's prosperity. The carriage pulls up outside a large townhouse on one of London's most fashionable streets. Lights blaze from every window. A footman in livery opens the carriage door and helps you step down. Inside, the house is warm and bright. Gas lighting, the latest modern convenience, illuminates the entrance hall. A maid takes your cloak, revealing your evening finery. The butler announces your family as you enter the drawing room: Mr. and Mrs. Wilson and Miss Jane Wilson. All heads turn. You feel your cheeks warm, but keep your expression composed as you make your curtsies to Mr. and Mrs. Fairchild. And there, standing beside his mother, is Thomas. He's taller than you remember, his evening clothes emphasizing his broad shoulders. He bows perfectly, not too deep, which would seem obsequious, but not too shallow, which would be disrespectful. "Miss Wilson," he says, his voice deeper than you recall. "How pleasant to see you again." "Mr. Fairchild," you reply, your voice carefully modulated. "I trust Oxford agrees with you." The smallest of smiles crosses his face. It does, thank you, though London has attractions that Oxford cannot claim. Is he flirting with you? It's so hard to tell with Victorian men. Their compliments are buried under layers of propriety. More guests arrive, the drawing room fills with the murmur of polite conversation. Everyone stands. Sitting before dinner would suggest eagerness to eat, which would be vulgar. You notice Charlotte Hartley and her fiancé, Mr. Edwards, across the room. They stand a respectable distance apart. No touching, no meaningful glances. To the casual observer, they might not even be engaged. When all the guests have arrived, the butler announces that dinner is served. Now comes the complex choreography of entering the dining room. The host, Mr. Fairchild, offers his arm to the highest-ranking female guest. The highest-ranking male guest offers his arm to the hostess. Everyone else pairs off according to status, forming a procession into the dining room. You find yourself paired with a middle-aged gentleman you've never met before. Thomas, you notice, is escorting an elderly lady with an elaborate turban of fabric on her head. The dining room dazzles with crystal silver and candlelight. The table gleams with polished silver and fine china. Each place setting has an intimidating array of utensils: fish forks, soup spoons, dessert spoons, multiple knives, and more. Using the wrong utensil would be a social catastrophe. You're seated about halfway down the table, not at the bottom, which is encouraging, but not near the top either. Thomas is on the opposite side, several seats away. During a Victorian dinner, you primarily converse with the gentleman seated to your left and right, never across the table. The gentleman to your right turns to you. "I understand you're acquainted with my nephew, Miss Wilson. Charles Pembroke, I believe. You danced at Lady Hamilton's ball last season." You search your memory. Yes, you did dance with a Mr. Pembroke. He stepped on your feet 3 times and talked exclusively about his horse. "Yes, indeed," you say pleasantly. "Mr. Pembroke is an accomplished dancer." A small white lie in the service of social harmony. The dinner progresses through multiple courses: soup, fish, meat, game, dessert, each with its own set of serving rituals and appropriate utensils. You carefully take small bites, chewing quietly. A lady is never seen to eat heartily, even if she's starving. Conversation around the table is carefully balanced between interesting and inoffensive. Politics, religion, money, and anything personal are strictly avoided. Instead, people discuss recent theatrical performances, exhibitions at the Royal Academy, the weather, and travels to acceptable destinations like Italy or France. You notice Thomas watching you from across the table. When your eyes meet, he quickly looks away. In this world of rigid social rules, even eye contact can be loaded with meaning. After dessert comes the most gendered ritual of the Victorian dinner party. Mrs. Fairchild catches the eye of the highest-ranking female guest and rises from her seat. This is the signal for all the ladies to leave the dining room, leaving the gentlemen to their port and cigars. You follow the procession of women back to the drawing room. This gender segregation serves multiple purposes in Victorian society. It allows the men to discuss male topics like business and politics. It gives women a chance to use the chamber pot if needed, a necessity given the voluminous skirts that make frequent bathroom trips difficult. And it preserves the fiction that ladies are too delicate to be exposed to cigars and strong drink. In the drawing room, the women arrange themselves in conversational groups. Mrs. Fairchild ensures that Charlotte and her fiancé's mother are seated together, a sign of approval for the upcoming marriage. "Will you play for us, Miss Wilson?" Mrs. Fairchild asked, gesturing to the pianoforte in the corner. Ah, here it is, the dreaded request. You can't refuse, but you also can't appear too eager. "If you wish it, Mrs. Fairchild," you say modestly, "though I'm sure there are more accomplished musicians present." "Nonsense," Mrs. Fairchild says. "We've all heard of your talent." You move to the piano, arranging your enormous skirt as best you can on the small bench. You play a piece by Mozart, technically challenging enough to show skill, but not so flamboyant as to seem showy. You keep your posture perfect, your face composed in a slight smile. No grimacing or swaying with the music. That would be considered overly emotional. When you finish, the ladies applaud politely. You acknowledge their approval with a modest nod, then return to your seat. Your hands are trembling slightly, but no one notices. A proper Victorian lady never shows nervousness. About half an hour after the ladies left the dining room, the gentlemen joined them. The smell of cigars clings to their clothes. Some have high colour in their cheeks from the port. The older men settle into chairs, while the younger ones circulate among the ladies. Thomas makes his way to your side, stopping to exchange pleasantries with several other guests first, to avoid appearing too eager. "I enjoyed your performance, Miss Wilson," he says, when he finally reaches you. "Mozart, was it not?" "Yes," you reply. "His sonata in C major." "You play with great feeling," he says, then adds quickly, "but appropriate restraint, of course." You smile slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Fairchild. I understand you're studying classics at Oxford?" And so begins the Victorian version of flirtation, a carefully controlled conversation about impersonal topics with real meaning hidden between the lines. You discuss books, nothing too romantic, music, nothing too passionate, and art, nothing too avant-garde. All the while, you're assessing each other. Is he intelligent? Is she well-read? Would our temperaments suit? You notice Mrs. Fairchild watching you both with a satisfied expression. Mothers are the primary architects of Victorian matches. No doubt she invited your family tonight specifically to throw you and Thomas together. After what seems like only a few minutes, but is actually nearly half an hour, Thomas reluctantly excuses himself. "I should speak with Miss Hartley and offer my congratulations on her engagement," he says. "Of course," you reply, hiding your disappointment. "It was pleasant conversing with you, Mr. Fairchild." He bows slightly. "The pleasure was mine, Miss Wilson." As he walks away, your mother appears at your side. "He seems quite attentive," she murmurs. "Does he?" you say, pretending you hadn't noticed. Your mother isn't fooled. "Don't appear too interested, Jane. Nothing scares away a potential suitor faster than an eager young lady." The evening continues with more music, some card games, and continuous circulation of guests around the room. Everyone is careful to speak to everyone else. No one stays in one conversation too long. The appearance of social harmony is paramount. At precisely 11 o'clock, the first guests begin to leave. This signals that it's acceptable for others to depart as well. The Victorians have strict rules even about when to end a party. Your father catches your mother's eye, and she nods slightly. Time to go. You make your farewells to the hosts, thanking them properly for their hospitality. Thomas is nearby and bows to you one last time. "Until we meet again, Miss Wilson," he says softly. "Good evening, Mr. Fairchild," you reply, your voice giving away nothing of your inner thoughts. Outside, your carriage is waiting. As you settle into the seat, you finally allow yourself a small sigh of relief. The evening went well. No social missteps, and Thomas seemed genuinely interested in you. "A successful evening," your father declares as the carriage pulls away. This is high praise from him indeed. "Your mother agrees," your mother says. "Mrs. Fairchild mentioned they're hosting a small musical evening next week. We're to receive an invitation." Your heart beats a little faster. Another opportunity to see Thomas. Back at home, Mary helps you undress, carefully hanging up your evening gown and putting away your jewellery. Your hair, so elaborately arranged, tumbles down your back as she removes the pins. "Did you enjoy yourself, miss?" Mary asks as she brushes out your hair. "It was a pleasant evening," you say, maintaining your composure even with your lady's maid. Servants observe everything and gossip among themselves. Any show of excitement about Thomas might reach his household through the servants' network. When Mary leaves, you sit at your dressing table for a moment, looking at your reflection. Behind your composed expression, your mind is racing. Did Thomas really seek you out specifically? What did his mother's watchful gaze mean? Will he call on you, or must you wait to meet again at the musical evening? Dating in the Victorian era is like playing chess while blindfolded. Every move matters, but half the time you don't even know you're making a move, and the stakes are high. Your entire future happiness depends on making a good match. You move to the window, pulling back the curtains slightly to look out at the foggy London night. Gas lamps create halos of light in the mist. A lone, handsome cab clatters past on the cobblestones. Somewhere out there, Thomas Fairchild is perhaps thinking of you too. But in this world of rigid propriety and hidden feelings, who can tell? You'll have to wait and see what the next social encounter brings, and what new rules you'll need to navigate. Your next encounter with Thomas Fairchild comes sooner than expected. The very next day, in fact. You're reading in the front parlour, half-heartedly turning pages of a suitably improving book about botany, when Mary appears at the door. "Mr. Thomas Fairchild is here, miss," she announces. "He's asking if you and your mother are receiving visitors." Your heart jumps, but your face remains perfectly composed. "Please tell him we are, Mary, and inform my mother." A proper Victorian young lady is never, ever left alone with a gentleman caller. Your mother must be present for the entire visit. Even stepping out of the room for a minute would be scandalous. Mary curtsies and disappears. You have about 30 seconds to prepare yourself. You check your hair in the small mirror above the fireplace, Straighten your posture and pick up your book again, arranging yourself to look naturally occupied. When he enters, the door opens, and there's Thomas, looking even more handsome in daylight. His formal morning clothes fit him perfectly. Dark coat, perfectly tied cravat, polished boots. He's carrying his top hat and gloves. A gentleman always removes his hat indoors but keeps his gloves on until seated. "Miss Wilson," he says, bowing, "I hope I find you well today." "Quite well, thank you, Mr. Fairchild," you reply, setting your book aside and gesturing to a chair. "Please be seated. My mother will join us momentarily." Thomas sits, finally removing his gloves and placing them inside his hat. This is the Victorian equivalent of getting comfortable. "I enjoyed the evening at your parents' home last night," you say, keeping your tone pleasant but not overly warm. "As did I," he replies. "My mother was particularly impressed with your musical performance." Before you can respond, your mother enters the room. Thomas immediately stands. A gentleman always rises when a lady enters. "Mr. Fairchild," your mother says, smiling. "What a pleasant surprise." Thomas bows again. "Mrs. Wilson, I hope I'm not calling at an inconvenient time." "Not at all," your mother assures him, taking a seat on the sofa beside you. Now the real dance begins. "I've come to extend an invitation," Thomas says. "My mother is hosting a small musical evening next Tuesday. She hopes Miss Wilson and your good selves will be able to attend." "Ah, so that's why he's here. Not just to see you, but as his mother's messenger. Still, he could have sent a servant with a written invitation. The fact that he came personally means something." "How kind," your mother says. "We would be delighted to accept." "Excellent," Thomas says, his eyes flickering to you. "My mother also mentioned she would be grateful if Miss Wilson might consider performing. Your rendition of Mozart last night was much admired. Now you understand completely. Mrs. Fairchild wants to show you off to her friends. You're being evaluated as a potential daughter-in-law." "I would be happy to play," you say modestly, though I'm sure your mother has engaged more accomplished musicians. Thomas shakes his head. "None that I'm aware of. Your talent would be the highlight of the evening." Is he actually complimenting you directly? That's borderline scandalous in Victorian terms. Your mother smoothly steps in. "My daughter practices diligently, Mr. Fairchild. We're grateful for the opportunity to share the fruits of her hard work." The conversation continues with this kind of formal back and forth, covering mutual acquaintances, upcoming social events. Thomas is careful to address most of his remarks to your mother, only occasionally looking at you directly. This is proper Victorian form. After exactly 15 minutes, the prescribed length for a morning call, Thomas stands. "I've taken enough of your time, Mrs. Wilson, Miss Wilson," he says. "I'll convey your acceptance to my mother. She'll be most pleased." Your mother rings for Mary, who appears to show Thomas out. He bows to both of you, his eyes lingering on you for just a moment longer than strictly necessary. When the door closes behind him, your mother turns to you with a satisfied expression. "Well," she says, "it seems the Fairchilds have taken an interest in you." You try to look only mildly pleased. "Mrs. Fairchild is very kind to include us in her musical evening." Your mother gives you a knowing look. "It wasn't Mrs. Fairchild who just called on us, was it?" Before you can respond, the bell rings again. Mary appears moments later. "Miss Charlotte Hartley and Mrs. Hartley, ma'am," she announces. More visitors. The morning call circuit is in full swing. Charlotte enters with her mother, both dressed in the height of fashion. Charlotte looks radiant. Engagement agrees with her, apparently. After the usual pleasantries, Charlotte leans forward slightly, her eyes bright with excitement. "Have you heard about Mrs. Pembroke?" she asks in a low voice. Your mother raises an eyebrow. "What about her?" Mrs. Hartley clucks her tongue. And that, my dear friends, is where we leave our intrepid Victorian heroine for now. Who knows what scandalous gossip awaits, or what new rules she'll accidentally break in her quest for love and acceptance. What do you think of Jane's adventures so far? Would you survive a day in Victorian England, or would you commit a social faux pas before breakfast? Let me know in the comments.